If you don't experiment with new varieties in your garden, then you'll never find the best seeds for your growing conditions. So today, I'm gonna talk about all of the things that we experimented with last season because I found a lot of things that I don't want to live without in the future. Here on Red Roof Family Farm, we grow a lot of food, but that doesn't actually mean that I grow a lot of varieties. I'm always trying to narrow in my list to the best adapted seeds to my growing conditions. We only have 2.5 acres here, and last season we only grew on about 1/4 of an acre. So it's a lot easier for me to just learn the specific varieties that I have and to work with succession plantings than to grow 100 different things. One of my biggest goals in 2020 was to narrow down what we were growing. Even though I tried to not have a huge range, in 2019 we had way more than we needed. And so because of that, I really focused in. But there was still some exciting temptations in those seed catalogs that I just had to grow. And so this is gonna be all of those experiments, what didn't work for me and what I really want to grow in the future. As you guys may know, Ian and I were tomato-based life forms. We are obsessed with tomatoes, and 2019 was the year of the tomatoes. We had about 50 varieties that we grew, a lot of them for the seedling sale, but I also wanted to experiment with them myself. So I planted at least 2 of everything. We had an amazing mix of stuff. And what I learned was a lot of those tomatoes I did not like. And a lot of those tomatoes did so poorly, I didn't even want to offer them to my customers. So following that year, 2020, we really narrowed in. We brought the list into about 30 that we offered to our customers, and I tried to really limit what I planted. But, you know, being tomato-based life forms, obviously there was stuff that was going to tempt me. And so we experimented with 3 new tomato varieties. The first tomato was Bigdena, and we got this from Johnny's Seeds. Bigdena is a high production greenhouse tomato. It is one that so many farmers were talking about, and I was really excited to grow it for myself. And these tomatoes, incredible tomatoes. It was hard to believe they were real. They were so perfect, you know, like perfectly round, perfectly unblemished. I hate a mealy, mushy tomato, and these were nice and firm, the way that I love a tomato. Just the other day, I pulled one out of the freezer, and when I defrosted it, it still had its texture. It didn't go completely to mush. And so, I personally really enjoyed having it. And if I could have sold it, we would have been growing that from now on. It would have been a permanent fixture on the farm. Unfortunately, our customers, they're a farmer's market customer. They know they can get a perfect red tomato in the grocery store, but they can't get those beautiful, unique tomatoes that you can only kind of get from local farms. And so this year, we are going more in that direction. We're only growing pink Berkeley tie-dye as large tomatoes for selling at the market, which means, unfortunately, no Bigdena for me. The other 2 tomatoes that I was super excited to experiment with, you guys all know that I am obsessed with Juliet, and it was pretty easy to sell me on these because they said similar to Juliet, and that's all I need to hear to have me spending all my money on tomatoes. I did Red Torch and Bronze Torch, and these, yet again, I got from Johnny's Seeds. These are like Juliet tomatoes if you made them so beautiful that you just couldn't help but staring at them. Juliet is beautiful to me for its production. It's beautiful to me for its diversity, for being able to cook with it, chop it. I love Juliet, but these, oh, so beautiful. I know lots of people complain about Juliet being a mild tomato. I personally like a mild tomato, so I enjoy it for that. But so the Red Torch and the Bronze Torch had a lot more flavor. They had more of those, rich, complicated flavors that you expect to get out of heirloom style tomato. But they're still in those nice, small, bigger than a grape, smaller than a Roma, package size that you get out of the Juliet. So they still had all that diversity that Juliet had. You could have it as a snacker, you could chop it up, or you could cook with it. They still hit on all the things I like about Juliet. And the thing that I like the most about them is I mix them in with my Juliet, and now I have these beautiful baskets of really unique looking tomatoes. Both the Red Torch and the Bronze Torch are coming back to the farm again this year. These are most likely going to be, permanent fixtures on the farm until something better comes along. But I will say, if you had to only pick one, my preference would be the Bronze Torch. We have very limited amounts of tomato disease here on the farm, but I did find on the Red Torch I was getting some blossom and rot. I don't know if that is from lack of calcium. Tomatoes can get it from low calcium in the soil, or if they're just disease prone, but I did have issues with the Red Torch, whereas the Bronze Torch, zero issues. And here on our farm, everything else that we grow, we have zero issues with. This Red Torch was the only variety we had on the farm this year that had any sort of disease issues. Next, let's talk about lettuce, because we talk about lettuce all the time here on the farm. We are obsessed with Salanova lettuce that you get from Johnny's, but the Salanova did struggle a little bit in 2019 for us in the heat of summer, and I'd heard lots of people discussing Muir, M-U-I-R, lettuce as being like a really excellent variety for that summer heat. Better than the Salanova, with lots of the benefits that I like in the Salanova. So I had to experiment with it. And in fact, what we did was we bought the entire Summer Crisp series that Johnny's offers. So Muir is, part of that package. So we tried them all. I think there was about 6 or 7 different varieties. Following that experiment, I'm sold. I know exactly what everyone's talking about. Muir is a beautiful, beautiful summer lettuce. Super tasty, nice and heavy, makes a good head. Also can be done as a salad mix. The benefits that I get out of the Salanova, I was very much seeing in Muir. The biggest sell for me on the Muir too was the fact that it held really well in the field. I could plant a bed. Other lettuces, even in that Summer Crisp series, were going to seed. Muir was staying sweet, it was staying beautiful, it was staying happy throughout that summer heat. So I'm growing it every year from now on. It's on the must-grow list. Out of the Summer Crisp series, the only other lettuce that we are bringing back on the farm is Magenta. Magenta had some reddish tones to it, so it worked really well to contrast beside the Muir to have, the visual appeal of 2 different heads. And then it was the second best at being bolt resistant, bitter resistant, heat, summer resistant to the Muir. So those 2 held up super well in the bed, grew nice and big throughout the heat of summer, and they are back on the farm for 2021. Another thing that I struggled with in 2019 is that I got some black powdery mildew on my basil. And once that happened, the crop degraded and I basically didn't have any basil left to sell once we got into the heat of summer, through into the fall. We have very low humidity here in Kelowna, so I don't struggle very often with mildew on my plants. And I know exactly what I did wrong with growing my basil. It's the fact that I had the plant spaced at 6 inches, which is very, very tight for basil that, really ideally would like some airflow to keep it disease-free. But I'm also trying to get the most money out of my beds as possible, so part of our system is planting really densely. So I was super excited when I was looking around on the Johnny Seeds website to see that they had recently introduced a downy mildew resistant, options for basil. They had 2 varieties, Prospera and Rutgers Devotion. Off the top of my head, I can't remember which one's which, but one was a little bit more compact of a plant, while the other one was, a little bit taller. I decided to buy both of them to experiment with them to see how they did, see if it made a difference, and it made a huge difference. We did not have any downy mildew problems at all in 2020. And the basil produced and it produced and it produced. It kept going all the way till October when we finally had our frosts. So one single planting, pounds and pounds and pounds of beautiful, delicious basil. The fact I don't have to rethink my crop planning, I don't have to rethink my crop, I can just bring in these, really disease-resistant seeds makes me so happy, and they're on the forever list. Next is beets. I really struggle with beets here on our new farm. I never had issue growing beets previously, but when we did our soil test here, we found out we have like 0 boron. Beets specifically are very sensitive to needing boron to grow healthy and happy. Because of that, I've been experimenting with a handful of different beets to see which ones I'm going to be the most likely to be able to grow through my neglect. In 2019, I didn't find any varieties that I was really excited about. I grew a lot of, the most popular classics, and none of them thrived for me. So in 2020, the next variety I decided to experiment with is called Kestrel. And we got this from William Dam Seeds, which is a seed source only in Canada. So you'll have to look around to see if this is available where you shop if you're down in the States. Kestrel grew very well for us. It was a very, very beautiful beet, very perfect, very round, not stringy. The greens were nice and strong and pretty looking. I want the greens to look as good as the roots. Despite the neglect that I gave it, it still did okay for us, and that is, an impressive showing. So I am gonna grow this again next year, and we're gonna look into doing a boron foliar application, which should help it go from passable to excellent. Fingers crossed. I love zucchini. Zucchini is my favorite, and we actually make pretty good money and pretty good sales on it here at the farm. The main season variety that I grow is Dunja, but I wanted to experiment with zucchini coming on a little bit earlier that was going to be grown inside one of our high tunnels. And so because of that, I needed to consider fruit set at colder temperatures and also pollinization. Zucchinis, the flowers need to be pollinated for the fruit to be turn into viable zucchinis. So I ended up getting Partanon. It did all of the features that we needed for it, and I was really happy with this plant. The Dunja zucchinis are excellent. They're like the perfect zucchini. I can't imagine there ever being a better zucchini than Dunja, though give me a decade and I'll try to find one. But the Partanon looked exactly the same as the Dunja. I found they were a little bit longer. The Dunja, they ended up being kind of like a little bit skinnier, longer, but side by side, they still were really beautiful zucchinis, and the production was really good. We only grow 3 crops in our greenhouses. We grow zucchinis, the Partanon, we grow tomatoes, and then finally we grow cucumbers. I love Tasty Green. It's a Japanese, long, skinny, beautiful cucumber, the best. We also do Diva, but when I was looking at cucumbers on William Dam Seeds and they had Martini, I couldn't resist. I do my best, as you all know, I do my best to resist these temptations, but Martini, this white little snacker cucumber, was too tempting. I couldn't do it. I had to buy it. It ended up being the tastiest cucumber I've ever had. We really struggled to sell it. It was this like little snacking, it was like a fat little pickling cucumber is what it looked like. But we gave them away. We were constantly like, oh, you gotta try this. This cucumber is so good. And everyone who tried it agreed. They're like, this is the best cucumber I've ever had. They didn't want to buy it. It was too difficult. Everyone was looking for, a bigger, English style cucumber for their actual purchase. Because of that, even though this is the best cucumber we've ever eaten, Ian's laid down the law. He told me I'm not allowed to grow it for the farm. It's just too hard to sell. We need to get it out of the rotation. But it was so good. I can't not. So I bought a home gardener size pack, and there will be a few plants at the end of the tunnel that will be for me to snack on all summer long, because these are an excellent excellent cucumber. Another one of our personal favorite crops to grow is eggplant. The problem with eggplant is it takes a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of space to get, a eggplant off a plant. But then when you bring it down to market, ideally you're like, I need like $8 for this eggplant. That was a lot of work, a lot of time. If I'm gonna be able to afford to grow these, I need to make a lot of money on them. And no one likes eggplant that much. I like eggplant that much. I'm excited when it always comes home. I didn't want to completely give up on eggplant as being a crop we could grow because it's so good. I love it. And I'm really passionate about growing it too. I love the plants. I love having lots of them, even though we struggle. So Johnny Seeds had these Orient series that said we're crazy early, super high production, and they're also an Asian style. So they're like a long, skinny eggplant, which means that it produces more, but I could I'm selling one at a lower per price point for at the market. So I thought maybe this is something that would work out for us. So I bought the two different colors. I bought Orient Express and Orient Charm. And they were great plants. They actually produced a lot. I really liked them, but unfortunately, we still just couldn't sell them. There was no complaints on the farm. We were drowning in eggplants and we loved it. We ate tons and tons of eggplants all summer long, and we have a bunch stored up in the freezer, but I have to cut them from the farm crop list. I'm not allowed. But Orient Express, the purple variety, is such an excellent eggplant that I'm bringing it back in. I'm going to have, a handful of plants, maybe 15, for our personal consumption because I love eggplant. I have to have it. And so far, this Orient Express is my favorite eggplant variety I've ever grown. Another experiment that I've been told we cannot be trying to sell because it just sold so poorly, but I highly recommend the seed, is we grew green 70D improved. We got this from Johnny Seeds, and it is basically a Guilan. And Ian and I love this crop. It's one of our favorite treats. It's everything we love about choy made infinitely better. Doesn't like the heat, but it grew really well for us here in the spring. And I've been looking for a Guilan that I really like to grow for myself. And I've been struggling. The ones that I've been finding, which have been categorized as choy sum or choy sim, they haven't been a thick enough stalk. I want like a nice rapini style stalk to my Guilan. That's what I'm looking for. It's like a nice hefty stalk, almost similar to the things that are enjoyable about asparagus. They're sweet and crisp and tender, and then you cook them down. They get these rich flavors. That's what Guilan is for us. And this green 70 was excellent. It was the perfect plant. It was exactly what I was looking for. And I was able to do cut and come again on it. So I was able to snap off the first stalk and then it sent up a couple extras. So it actually had a longer harvest season, which is nice because it kind of, it all comes on at once. So excellent in my home garden, but unfortunately we just couldn't sell it. Another plant that I was super happy with in 2020, which unfortunately won't be coming back, is we grew sweet peppers for the first time. And this was a just random COVID experiment. We had leftover peppers and we had space, so we planted it up. We weren't really expecting much out of it. And the variety that we grew is like a not exciting, find it at the dollar store variety, California Wonder. It's just, generic green pepper. You can find it at any store, any hardware store when they do veggie seedlings. But those peppers produced crazy for us. They were a really, really nice bell pepper. Nice thick walled bell pepper, nice flavor on them, really high production. I was really, really happy with the variety, and I was really happy with, the peppers as an item to add in to our farm sales. They sold pretty well, and for the production that we got, it was worth doing it. Because I'd never thought of sweet peppers as something that would be a moneymaker for me, I'd never really put much thought into it. So this coming season is going to be the, experimenting for sweet bell peppers year. So I'm bringing in a few different varieties that I'm going to try out here on the farm that should have better production and better disease resistance and just overall a happier plant than the California Wonder. But I didn't expect very much out of California Wonder, and it, more than impressed me with what it did. So, an old classic, but for a reason. Finally, I saved this for last because I could basically sum up what the theme for new seeds of 2020 was with hot peppers. Hot peppers was the huge experiment for the year. We grew a lot of hot peppers. And I know this video is getting long, but backstory. We do seedling sales here in the spring, and we have been specializing so far in specialty tomatoes. We've been bringing in varieties of tomatoes that you maybe can't find anywhere else as being the reason for people to come and shop with us. And what I discovered through those sales is, as much as there are people who are as picky as me about tomatoes, there's like 2 of us, there is a lot of people who are really passionate about hot peppers. And they told me over and over again that they would really like to see me bulk up my hot pepper options. So in 2020, we did about 20 different varieties of hot peppers. They told us they wanted them, so we grew them. We had excellent sales. The hot peppers really did sell very well for us. People who liked hot peppers would come and they'd buy one of everything. They left with, 15 hot pepper plants. So they did sell well, but we were left over with, about 50 hot peppers, a few of every single variety. So I figured I better plant these. I better see what they're like. I better see if everyone was passionate about this specific hot pepper. We have the market, these super hots that I don't normally like. Maybe I can sell them to people. It won't be a waste. And so I got way more hot pepper experience last year than I ever expected I would get. We were picking hot peppers every single week, and the production was pretty good. The sales for us weren't great. The problem with hot peppers is how many hot peppers do you really need? Most people just want 1 or 2 of those super hots. And so we had a high volume. We're not complaining. We ended up making a bunch of hot sauces, so they didn't go to waste. But there's a lot that I'm not gonna grow again in the future. The first one that's on the meh list was one that I was really excited about. One of my favorite types of peppers are cayennes. I like big, large cayennes because I use those to make my hot sauce. I like the bulk of pepper that you get off of the plant, and then it not being super spicy. It's the perfect hot sauce pepper for me. So I tried giant Ristra. This sounded like it was going to be the best pepper for me. It was going to be super high production, nice thick walls, right heat, and I just was very underwhelmed by this plant. The production was very late, and the peppers were huge. They were massive peppers. I can, when they were in the baskets of peppers, they looked like a shepherd's pepper. They didn't look like a hot pepper, but it produced 2 or 3 of these through the entire course of the year, and the production really happened very late. We're zone 5. Obviously, if you have a longer season, maybe the production ramps up at the very end, but it's not coming back. In fact, my favorite pepper for doing my hot sauce, for the volume of bulk that I get off of it, is super old-fashioned, classic, large, red, thick cayenne, I think is what it is. I always label it LRT. This super good production, super good flavor, super good bulk, great pepper. So unfortunately, giant Ristra, even though it looked like it might be an improvement, it's not coming back. We're going back to the original. But if you want to talk about good production, I was super impressed with Crackle chili. This one was Indian chili. I think they said it was like a an Indian curry chili. And the production on this pepper was crazy. It was really, really good production. We were picking them green, but when they ripened to red, they still had a really nice flavor too. And they were, you know, they weren't super big, but they had a thick wall. They actually had some bulk. They're not like some of those like really thin-skinned chilies that seems like it's just seeds. It's just spice from the seeds. So I really, really liked this Crackle pepper. We only grow a handful of chilies. I usually put like 2 in, and then, you know, that's more than enough for me for the year. But I really like the Crackle fresh, and I have some that I let ripen to red and dried, and they've been great. They've been a great chili for cooking. One that I harvested absolutely 0 of, but I loved having it, was Phyllis Blue. This, adorable. The foliage on it was like black and green colors. Very, very pretty. It made this really nice, compact, you know, almost hedging style plant. And then it had these little like black blueberry. There are these tiny little circles. They're so cute. I had a lot of these left over. I did sell them at the seedling sale, but it was one of the slower sales. And I ended up doing a wall on one of my decorative gardens. Like, I edged the entire garden with these Phyllis Blue, and they made this really pretty little hedge. So as a decorative, I really liked it, but the peppers, the flavor wasn't that exciting. It definitely seems like this plant is more intended as a decorative plant than, you know, an eating plant. Another one that was similar to the small berries of Phyllis Blue, but this one is definitely been designed for flavor, not for looks, is this funky pepper that we got from Johnny's. I'm gonna say this wrong. Biquinho yellow? I don't know. It's a Brazilian pepper. They were these like tiny little raindrop shaped peppers, and the flavor on them, like incredible flavor. Not a lot of spice, very citrusy, zesty, very cool pepper. I often would just like pick them and eat them out in the field, but we didn't pick very many because the peppers were really difficult to pick off the plant. They, you know, you pull on it and they would not snap off. You almost needed to like get snips to get these peppers off the plant, and they were loaded. They were loaded with peppers, but they were these tiny little, you know, raindrop peppers, as I said. So they ended up, because we had so many other peppers, just kind of getting left and forgotten. In my home garden, I'd probably be really happy to have one of these growing. They are a beautiful decorative feature. You know, I could almost see this in my flower garden, but then they actually are good for eating. So it's not coming back for me, but it's on my recommend list. As I said, not a huge hot pepper fan, but the customers who were coming to us for the seedlings wanted us to grow the hottest peppers we could get our hands on. So because of that, we grew a habanero pepper. Normally, I wouldn't have even bothered to plant it, but I had so many people when they were buying it telling me how fun the habaneros are, and the plant itself, even when they were like these petite little plants, they were really pretty. So I got suckered in by all the pepper enthusiasts, and I threw a handful of them into my garden. And I will say, I'm glad that I grew them. I did use them. The flavor of them is amazing, and they had really good production. But the production didn't happen until very late in our season. I can see why pepper enthusiasts, they start this pepper super early. They start this pepper, you know, now, whereas I'm starting everything kind of into March. If this pepper had an extra, you know, month or 2 in the seedling form before I planted it out into the ground, I'm sure I would have just been drowning in habaneros. They were loaded with green peppers by the time the frost came and killed them in October. And, you know, if they would have been able to ripen, it would have been an insane amount of peppers. The flavor, like, I can see why people love them. The flavor was really good, but they're They're so hot. And we tried to sell them out on the stand, but overall people were not wanting an entire basket of a habanero. They wanted one, and so, you know, we ended up giving them away to customers often. But they, you know, hard sell, late production, it's just not enough benefits for them to be coming back. But saving the best for last, guys. We have completely changed our minds on hot peppers following our 2020 hot pepper experiment. Prior to that, as I've said earlier, the cayennes, they were my favorite. They were my go-to for hot sauces. This was the main thing that I grew. But we had lots of requests for Hungarian peppers, and so we grew a bunch of those. We had 2 different varieties that we wanted to have for the seedling sale. And the Hungarians are kind of more middle heat, you know, a little bit spicier than my cayennes that I'd been going to, but not a super hot. So we grew 2 varieties, black Hungarian and then Hungarian hot wax. And the black Hungarian, the picture was like so cool. I was in love with what this pepper looked like, so I knew I had to keep some of those for myself. And then I grew a lot of the you know, red and yellow Hungarian. So that one, you know, we just planted a big batch of them because they were there. These peppers are the best tasting hot peppers I've ever had. For me, there's no going back. I'm a Hungarian hot pepper convert. These, like, if you're gonna grow one hot pepper, these Hungarian ones are super. I'm drooling thinking about them. Super rich, super tasty. The heat isn't super high. They made the best hot sauce, and having that black one, the hot sauce had like just super, super cool colors, like, because it ended up being this dark, rich red. They also were incredibly productive. The peppers, you know, they're a good size, you know, kind of similar to a jalapeno, and then also similar to the flesh of a jalapeno, where it's nice and thick. So even though the Hungarians weren't as big as these like big oversized cans that I've been growing, the bulk that I was getting out of them because of the thick walls was excellent for all these hot sauces that I was making. Honestly, if I'm going into the future, there's going to be a lot of Hungarians in my garden. We love doing these fermented hot sauces, and, you know, the Hungarians too, they blended, you know, we blended it with a few other ones, and they were just such a base flavor. So sum up, peppers, pepper of the year, hot pepper of the year, anything Hungarian. I highly recommend you try it if you've never tried them before. We grew a few other hot peppers, you know, that we had a handful of jalapenos, but these were all the ones that were new or ones that I had something to say. You know, I haven't found my jalapeno of choice yet. So I don't really have anything to say on jalapeno yet. I'm still searching. One of these days I'm gonna find my dream jalapeno. I just haven't found it yet. So, lots of experiments, 2020. You know, even though my list, I narrowed it in, I definitely feel like there was a lot of knowledge gained from all these new varieties that I grew. I do have, you know, a whole list of new experiments for the 2021 farm season. I'm not necessarily going to talk about those because I don't know yet, right? Like, I'd rather make this list talking about the experiments from last year where I can give you the end result than to talk about the things that I'm excited about for 2021. I will go over those in my unboxings that are coming up, but these are the things that I'm excited about, and hopefully these supplement really nicely in with my favorite seeds, and I'm gonna do a few more videos on things that we grow and favorite seeds going forward in through the rest of the month too. So stay tuned.